We all know what mainstream French culture looks like, whether through media, first-hand accounts, or stereotypes. In this video, I would like to focus more on the lesser-known side of regional cultures unique to France or which just happen to reside within their borders. Human cultures in France span back thousands of years to the Upper Paleolithic, with the Aurignacian, Gravettian, Solutrean, Magdalenian cultures continuing into the Neolithic with the cultures of Old Europe, until the cultural expansion of the Celtic realm. The Celtic culture of France remained until the expansion of Rome, whose empire turned the region into a Latin-speaking place. Even with the Germanic migrations and the influence they brought, France remained a Latin country, even though the name of the country comes from the Germanic Franks. France is predominantly a Latin-speaking country, but there are major language differences between the various regions. Official French is mostly associated with the north of the country, a region centered around Paris. We will start this video by going through all the various Latin-based cultures, and then we will look at the non-Latin ones that can be found in this country. Also, we will focus on metropolitan France and not the overseas territories, otherwise this video would be 3 hours long. This is what colonial legacies do to YouTube videos. We also have to mention that France is somewhat unique on the continent when it comes to the suppression of all regional languages and a conscious plan of assimilation into the mainstream French cultural realm. This is why so many of these regional cultures, especially the ones closest to Parisian French, have dwindled and ceded much of their land to Parisian French. I, of course, support minority cultural rights and hope that things change and that their cultures make a massive comeback. Ever since the Industrial Revolution and then globalization, the world has become much smaller. Nation states have taken over, and in areas of the country which don't reflect this top-down version of what the nation state should look like, they have tried, and in most cases across the planet succeeded to either forcefully or through social incentives alter the regional culture. I view this in the same way I view the loss of biodiversity in nature through agriculture or other forms of human impact on nature like hunting, pollution, climate change, or for instance forest management where shrubs get cut to clear ways for human exploration, grazing of cattle, recreation. Both cultural globalization and loss of biodiversity are bad things. Of course, we feel the loss of biodiversity much more. Take as an example the bee question and what their extinction would do. But both of these issues reduce the intricacy of our planet, which in my mind makes it less remarkable and therefore is a bad thing. We start our journey in the north of France, where we will talk about the Oil languages. These are all the Gallo-Romance languages that developed in the north of France. The expanded Gallo-Romance language range looks like this. The Gallo in the name refers to the Gallic Celtic population that embraced Roman Latin and later on developed their own languages based on Latin. The Oil languages get their name from the word for yes, which in French is oui, whereas the Southern Gallo-Romance variants, known as Occitan, say oc for yes, hence why we call them Languedoc. As I have already mentioned, French itself is a Oil language, but since we are interested in the lesser known ones, we will go straight to Norman. The northern French region was heavily populated by West Germanic Franks, and Normans are also a Germanic tribe, but their origin is North Germanic, from Scandinavia. They came to France in the 10th century, a time of very frequent Viking raids. The French decided to invite a group of Scandinavians to settle this region in return for protection from further attacks. This region later became known as Normandy. The Germanics eventually lost their language and assimilated into the Latin population. The Normans would end up playing pivotal roles in the medieval history of Europe and beyond, since they kept expanding militarily and ended up conquering England in 1066, setting up the Kingdom of Sicily, and Principality of Antioch during the Crusades. Today, there are about 20,000 native speakers of Norman. It is also important to note that many of the oil languages closest to Paris can more accurately be seen as dialects rather than standalone languages. Other languages that belong to this group are Poitevin in the north, Gallo on the border of Normandy and Brittany, and many others. Now we are headed to the south of France to talk about Occitan. Until the 1800s, the vast majority of the south of this country spoke Occitan. There were instances before the French Revolution when the north tried to suppress it, but the real persecution started during and after the revolution. Today, less than a million people consider it their native language, which is a real shame. The north and south of France have had a long-standing historical antagonism. One of the earliest conflicts between the two happened during the Albigensian Crusade. The Occitan region in this time period was under the heavy influence of the Cathars. They were a form of Christianity considered to be heretical by the Catholic Church. Their main region of influence was the south of France, which is why the Occitan region today is often connected to the Cathars. The closest language to Occitan is Catalan, and it's interesting how the Crown of Aragon actually supported the Cathars during the Crusade. Now we are going to the east to talk about Franco-Provençal, also known as Arpitan. It is part of the Gallo-Romance family, but it's more closely related to the north than Occitan. It is spoken by people in France, Switzerland, and Italy, with it being an official regional language in Italy. The language is historically linked to the existence of the Duchy of Savoy, which in the Middle Ages linked these border regions together. The language today has about 157,000 native speakers. Next, let's go southwest to talk about Catalan. It's mostly associated with the Catalan region of Spain, but the culture does exist in France as well. This small region north of the Pyrenees used to be part of Spain, but after the 30 Years' War it was given to France as part of the peace treaty. But the future of both Catalan-speaking regions would encounter the same difficulties and discrimination on both sides of the border. Catalan today has about 9 million speakers, when including both native and second language speakers. The last Gallo-Romance language we will mention is Ligurian. It only has 600,000 native speakers, and in France it is found in the southeast and the south of Corsica. Its region basically overlaps with the Italian regions in France. These lands were annexed in 1860. France took control of Savoy and Nice, and its Italian population became new French citizens. Italians have always had a large impact on France. The Latin language itself came from what is today the capital of Italy. And many prominent people in French history, such as Catherine de' Medici, Jean-Baptiste Lully, Napoleon, Émile Zola, were either from Italy or had Italian ancestry. The last Latin-speaking people we will mention in this video are the Corsicans. The island of Corsica has always been part of the Italian cultural sphere, and its language is closer to Italian than French. In 1768, it became part of France, and a series of wars and new occupations later, it still remained a part of France. Corsica also gave France one of their most famous historical figures, Napoleon Bonaparte. The island of Corsica is famous for its struggle for independence, especially since the 70s. The Corsican language today has about 150,000 native speakers. Now we will move on to the various Germanic languages of France. The two most prominent examples are Alsatian and Lorraine Franconian. Both of them are in the east of France, on the border with German-speaking areas. They are mutually intelligible to different degrees. Alsatian, for example, seems to be similar to Swiss German. Both of these populations, of course, are the remnants of the Holy Roman Empire on French soil because both used to be part of the German-dominated empire. Combined, they have around 1 million native speakers. The second example of a Germanic culture in France is French Flemish. This one is very simple. It is just the Flemish language from Belgium crossing borders into the northern tip of France. The second to last culture is the Celtic culture of Brittany. The native Celtic language of France, also known as Gaulish, have all disappeared. Breton's origin is clear in the name: Breton, Brittany, Britain. The Bretons are Celts from Britain who fled the Germanic Anglo-Saxon conquest of that island and settled in northwestern France. Brittany has long remained independent of France until 1532, when it was finally incorporated. Today there are more than 200,000 speakers of Breton. The last cultural group are the Basque people of southwestern France. Similar to the Catalans, the Basque are more commonly associated with Spain, but just like the Catalans, their native region is also split in two by the border between France and Spain. And just like the Corsicans, they are famous for their resistance to foreign rule and struggle for independence, especially in Spain. But as of late, they have abandoned the more radical ways of fighting for autonomy. The Basque people are, technically speaking, the true natives of this whole region because they are a remnant of the old Europe cultures that existed throughout Europe before the Indo-European expansion. Today, there are about 1 million native speakers of the Basque language. And that is it for the video. Love you all, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye-bye.